think you should be more a part of your team, folks. No matter what is going on. In the public, you got to be a part of the team. Maybe in the locker room, you're not, but you have to exude that type of togetherness in public.
So those are strong words from Walt Clyde Frazier, who is a legend. Damian Jones, we should set up the credentials. Again, you played with Damian Jones, who played with and coached LeBron, and you took umbrage with those comments from Clyde. Why?
Well, it's not just Clyde. It's everybody. The Lakers are not doing well this year. You know, LeBron is...
That "I hate him" line isn't clickbait, because at 80 years old, Walt Frazier still has 5 NBA superstars he will never forgive. Picture this: Madison Square Garden. Clyde sits courtside in a cow print suit, looking as cool as ever. But when the camera cuts to him during broadcast, there's something in his eyes. A judgment, a standard these modern stars just can't meet, and he's not staying quiet about it. This is out of bounds for real, because Frazier basically says the modern game has been diluted by player entitlement, by shortcuts, and by stars who forgot what it means to honor the check that fans pay to see them play. And if you're loving this deep dive into old school truth, do me a favor right now and hit that hype button to show this video some love. It helps us keep bringing you these stories that matter. Now let's get into why Clyde can't forgive these 5. To understand why Frazier holds these grudges, you need to know where he's coming from. The 1970s Knicks weren't a super team. They were a collection of smart players who sacrificed personal glory for something bigger. Willis Reed, Dave DeBusschere, Bill Bradley, Earl Monroe. And conducting it all was Clyde himself, a defensive terror with active hands, who could strip the ball and start the break in a heartbeat. But he did it with a stoic calm, grace under pressure. That was the Knicks way. Find the open man, play together, show up every single night. And the defining moment of that philosophy happened in Game 7 of the 1970 Finals. Willis Reed limped onto the court with a torn thigh muscle. Everyone knew he couldn't really play, but he showed up. And Frazier put up 36 points and 19 assists to seal the championship. That game became Frazier's measuring stick for every player who came after. If you can walk, you play. If you take the check, you show up. If you have talent, you use it to help the team, not just yourself. And by that standard, 5 modern superstars have failed miserably. Frazier sees them as symbols of a new era where player empowerment turned into player entitlement, where stars treat teams like rental cars, where defense is optional, where showing up is negotiable, and Frazier won't let it slide, because he's also speaking for someone else. The fan in the nosebleed seats who saved up for weeks just to see a star play. In the 1970s, players and fans were closer, economically, emotionally. The bond was sacred because the fan paid the salary. Today, contracts exceed $50 million annually, and Frazier views that contract as a binding covenant, a promise to be omnipresent, to give everything. When a player breaks that promise, no efficiency rating can justify it. It's unforgivable. So let's talk about the 5 who broke the code. Number 5, LeBron James, the super team architect and the man who ruined parity. Now, Frazier respects LeBron's skills. He praises his passing and basketball IQ during broadcasts. But respect doesn't mean forgiveness, and Frazier will never forgive LeBron for the decision. July 2010. LeBron announced he was taking his talents to South Beach. Before that moment, superstars mostly stayed with their drafted teams. There was a sense of ownership over the city's struggle. You built something, you suffered through losing seasons. You earned the championship by toppling giants, not by joining them. But LeBron changed everything. He colluded with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh to form an instant contender. And in Frazier's eyes, that move killed the organic nature of the league. Frazier argues that it forced other teams to scramble and assemble artificial rosters just to compete. The slow build that created the 1970 Knicks or the 1990s Bulls became impossible. The arms race turned the NBA into a league of haves and have-nots. Small market teams became feeder systems for the elite, and the NBA draft, which Frazier believes is the key mechanism for parity, became useless. When stars can just force their way to specific markets or team up in free agency, what's the point of the draft? Frazier has publicly agreed with Steve Kerr and Adam Silver on this. He believes LeBron's movement from Cleveland to Miami, back to Cleveland, then to Los Angeles treated franchises like rental cars. This lack of permanence undermines the connection between city and player. A connection Frazier cherishes as a lifelong Knick, treated like royalty in New York. He thinks LeBron deprived Cleveland of the organic journey to a title, choosing instead the manufactured efficiency of the Heatleys. And this philosophy extends to Frazier's GOAT debate debate. He refuses to crown LeBron the greatest of all time. Instead, Frazier picks Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. His argument for Wilt is based on rule changes. The NBA changed rules to stop Wilt. They widened the lane because he was too dominant. But the modern NBA changed rules to help perimeter players. They banned hand-checking to make scoring easier for guys like LeBron and Jordan. Frazier's GOAT hierarchy goes Wilt first for averaging 50 points per game and forcing rule changes. Kareem second for winning at every level without hopping teams. Oscar Robertson third for averaging a triple-double before it was trendy. By leaving LeBron out of that top tier, Frazier is making a statement. He's saying LeBron's dominance is helped by a league that protects offensive players and allows him to handpick his teammates, a luxury the old legends never had. Frazier views LeBron's GM-style player empowerment, like trading young cores for Anthony Davis, as a shortcut that disqualifies him from the purity of the GOAT conversation. LeBron might have the stats and the rings, but in Frazier's book, the asterisk of how he got them will always be there. The decision wasn't just a basketball move, it was a cultural shift that changed how players view loyalty and competition. And Frazier sees that shift as a betrayal of everything the game stood for. The impact of the decision reverberates through every subsequent superteam formation and every trade demand that followed. Number 4, Kyrie Irving, the professionalism disaster and the locker room chaos agent. Frazier's critiques of Durant and Harden focus on the court, but with Kyrie, it's personal. It's about professionalism, about respecting the game and the organization. Frazier has represented the Knicks with impeccable class for 5 decades. He places a premium on being a stand-up guy, and Kyrie fails that test completely. Frazier has repeatedly questioned whether Kyrie could have survived in the Knicks locker room of the early 1970s. The answer is always no. Back then, the locker room was a sanctuary. Coach Red Holtzman was the general. His word was law. Captain Willis Reed set the tone. Internal disagreements stayed internal. The goal was singular: winning, no distractions, no noise, no personal agendas. Frazier sees Kyrie as the antithesis of that ethos, a player who constantly introduces external chaos into the team environment. Whether it was his flat earth theories, his unexplained absences when he went off the grid, or the vaccine mandate saga with the Nets, Kyrie represents disorder. In the old days, you didn't have these distractions. You played for the team, not for your own brand or your own agenda. If you took the check, you showed up and did your job. Kyrie's sporadic availability for non-injury reasons is seen as a lack of respect for the privilege of being an NBA superstar. Frazier mentions how players in his era played through broken bones and even on the day of family funerals. That was the standard. That was toughness. Kyrie's wavering commitment is viewed as an insult to the players who fought for the salary structures Kyrie now enjoys. The critique intensified during Kyrie's time with the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets tried to challenge the Knicks as New York's premier basketball franchise, a turf war that Frazier took personally. When Kyrie and Durant joined Brooklyn, Frazier was skeptical from the start. He compared them unfavorably to the tough-nosed Nets teams of Jason Kidd and Kenyon Martin. He predicted that their talent would be overshadowed by lack of cohesion and leadership, and he was proven right. The Nets experiment collapsed under the weight of trade demands, injuries, and dysfunction. Frazier views that failure as a moral failure of leadership laid largely at Kyrie's feet. Kyrie also undermined coaches in ways that horrified Frazier. His public comments about the Nets not really needing a head coach when Steve Nash was in charge were seen as deeply disrespectful to the hierarchy of the sport. In Frazier's era, you didn't question the coach. You didn't create media storms. You respected the chain of command. Kyrie shattered all of that. Frazier often rhymes about players who are stumbling and bumbling, but with Kyrie, the critique is simpler. He's just missing, unavailable, unreliable. You can't depend on him. And in a team sport, that's unforgivable. Talent doesn't matter if the team isn't united. Chemistry is everything. And Kyrie, whether in Boston or Brooklyn, has historically destabilized locker rooms. For Frazier, that makes him a player who could never have worn the Knicks blue and orange in the golden era. He wouldn't have passed the old school locker room test. The chaos he brings isn't worth the talent he possesses. And that's a line Frazier draws clearly. What bothers Frazier most about Kyrie is the missed potential. Here's a player with championship experience alongside LeBron, with skills that can take over games, but who consistently allows off-court issues to derail his teams. Frazier sees it as a waste of talent and a slap in the face to players who would have killed for Kyrie's opportunities. Number 3, Kawhi Leonard, the load management pioneer and the part-time superstar. Frazier played in an era where the concept of load management didn't exist. If you could walk, you played. Frazier himself logged massive minutes during championship runs, often playing through pain, fatigue, and injury. So Kawhi Leonard sitting out games for maintenance drives Frazier absolutely crazy. He's jokingly called himself the president of the club against resting players. But there's nothing funny about his anger. He finds the practice of sitting out games, especially back-to-backs or nationally televised matchups, to be appalling. And Kawhi, who popularized the term during his time with Toronto and the Clippers, is the main target. Frazier views professional basketball as a performance art and a commercial transaction. Fans pay high-ticket prices to see the stars. When a superstar like Kawhi sits out in street clothes despite being medically cleared to play, Frazier sees it as theft. You are the showman. You are the reason they came. That's the core of Frazier's broadcast philosophy. He often tells stories of families driving hours to see the Knicks play, only to be crushed when a star doesn't suit up. He believes the modern player has lost touch with this obligation. The massive guaranteed contracts have insulated players like Kawhi from the economic reality of the fan experience. Frazier's critique also strikes at player toughness. He implies modern players are soft compared to their predecessors. He cites the grueling travel schedules of the 1970s, commercial flights, carrying your own bags, sleeping in subpar hotels, playing 3 games in 3 nights, wearing canvas sneakers with no arch support. Compare that to today. Private chartered jets, 5-star accommodations, world-class nutritionists, recovery technology like cryotherapy and hyperbaric chambers, a custom orthotics that cost $200. For Kawhi to require maintenance days despite these massive technological and logistical advantages is unfathomable to Frazier. It suggests a lack of love for the game itself. Frazier believes Kawhi treats the NBA season as a burden to be managed rather than a competition to be embraced. And here's the thing, Frazier views the regular season not as a warm-up for the playoffs, but as the crucible where habits are formed. By skipping the crucible, Kawhi devalues the entire season. Connected to this is Frazier's disdain for players forcing their way out of franchises. He's been vocal about stars like Kawhi and Anthony Davis demanding trades while under contract. He argues this negates the draft and destroys parity. Kawhi's maneuvering to get from San Antonio to Toronto, then to Los Angeles while orchestrating the Paul George trade, represents player empowerment run amok. Frazier believes players should honor their contracts. Period. Kawhi's willingness to hold franchises hostage, coupled with his refusal to play a full schedule, places him firmly on Frazier's list of players who diluted the league's integrity. Frazier has explicitly agreed with Steve Kerr's assessment that this trend is dangerous for the league's future. To Frazier, Kawhi is the symbol of a player who takes the money but doesn't fulfill the obligation, and that's something he can't forgive. The part-time superstar mentality is antithetical to everything Frazier believes about being a professional athlete. Kawhi's approach has also set a precedent that younger players now follow, creating a culture where sitting out becomes normalized rather than exceptional. Number 2, James Harden, the defensive void and the Matador era. If Kevin Durant offends Frazier's sense of competition, James Harden offends his aesthetic and tactical sensibilities. Frazier watches games with the critical eye of a former all-defensive first-team selection 7 times over. His disdain for Harden is rooted in what Frazier famously coined as Matador defense. Picture a bullfighter. The bull charges, the Matador simply steps aside and waves it through. That's Matador defense. The player steps across and lets the guy score. Frazier uses this term constantly during Knicks broadcasts when analyzing Harden's play. For a player like Frazier, who prided himself on active hands and lateral movement, who earned his nickname Clyde, partly because his stealing ability resembled a bank robber, defensive apathy is the ultimate disrespect to the game. It suggests the player believes he's too good to engage in the grunt work of the sport. And Harden, especially during his Houston years, became the poster child for this laziness. Beyond defense, Frazier hates Harden's offensive style. Frazier's Knicks were the epitome of the open man. Ball movement, cutting, unselfishness. Harden's prime in Houston was the opposite. Record-breaking usage rates. Isolation-heavy basketball. Frazier critiques the dribbling exhibition that Harden puts on, noting that it freezes teammates and disrupts the rhythm of the game. He calls this style stagnant. While he acknowledges Harden's scoring ability, he views the methodology as antithetical to winning basketball in the team sense. Dribbling the air out of the ball for 20 seconds before launching a step-back 3 reduces the other 4 players on the court to spectators, and Frazier believes that destroys locker room morale. During games where the Knicks face Harden's teams, seasoned viewers know to expect a specific tone from Frazier. His commentary shifts from joyous wordplay to sharp critique. Frazier often accuses Harden of playing the violin, flailing his arms to simulate contact and deceive the referees. Frazier, who played in an era of limited foul calls and intense physicality, views this foul hunting as a form of cheating. It manipulates the rules rather than mastering the game. Frazier has zero patience for a superstar who relies on the whistle rather than the bucket. He also frequently highlights Harden's off-ball defense. He'll point out instances where Harden stands flat-footed, watching the ball while his man cuts back door. To Frazier, this is appalling. He rhetorically asks the audience how a player with such offensive gifts can show such little pride on the other end. In the old-school Knicks locker room, Frazier contends such behavior would have been policed immediately by teammates like Willis Reed or Dave DeBusschere. The fact that Harden's teammates tolerate it is a sign of the eroded standards of the modern league. For Frazier, Harden represents everything wrong with modern basketball priorities. Offense over defense. Individual stats over team success, gaming the system over mastering the craft. It's not just that Harden doesn't play defense, it's that he doesn't seem to care. And to a 7-time all-defensive first-team player, that's unforgivable. Harden might score 30 points, but if he gives up 35 on the other end because he's waving opponents through like a matador, what's the point? Frazier sees Harden as a player with transcendent talent who chose the easy path, who chose not to compete on both ends. And for that, Clyde can never forgive him. The lack of pride on defense represents a fundamental disrespect to the game that Frazier dedicated his life to mastering. What makes it worse in Frazier's eyes is that Harden has the physical tools to be a solid defender. It's not a lack of ability, it's a lack of will. And that choice to prioritize offense while abandoning defense epitomizes the selfishness that Frazier believes is destroying team basketball. Number 1, Kevin Durant, the asterisk legacy and the betrayal of competition. Of all the modern superstars, Kevin Durant draws the most pointed, specific, and historically damaging critique from Walt Frazier. The animus centers on one defining moment. Summer of 2016, Durant's decision to join the Golden State Warriors. To Frazier, this wasn't just a change of address. It was a violation of the competitive code that governed the league for decades. It was the moment the superstar ceased to be a competitor and became a front-runner. Frazier made headlines when he explicitly stated that Durant's championships with Golden State should carry an asterisk. In sports history, the asterisk is a weaponized punctuation mark, usually reserved for records tainted by scandal, like steroids in baseball, or structural anomalies like shortened seasons. For Frazier to apply it to a legitimate free agency move highlights the depth of his moral objection. The logic is simple. The 2015-16 Warriors had set the NBA record with 73 wins and 9 losses. They were a fully realized championship entity. Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. They'd just come off a title and nearly repeated. In Frazier's view, Durant, arguably the second best player in the world at the time, joining a 73-win juggernaut removed the struggle from the championship equation. He joined a team that really didn't need him. There will be an asterisk next to his name. That's a direct quote from Frazier, and it cuts deep. Frazier's critique is that Durant didn't join a team to help them win. He joined a team that was already winning to ensure he would not lose. That distinction is vital. Frazier contrasts Durant's path with the old-school mentality where stars stayed with their franchises and tried to topple the giants, not join them. Frazier recalls his own battles against the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers. The Knicks didn't try to merge with Jerry West or Wilt Chamberlain to guarantee a title. They built a system to defeat them. That's the essence of competition. Overcoming the obstacle, not becoming part of it. Frazier admits that Durant is a transcendent talent. He praises Durant's scoring efficiency and unguardable nature. But here's the twist. That greatness makes the transgression worse in Frazier's eyes. If a role player joined the Warriors to ring chase, it would be forgotten. But for a player of Durant's caliber, an MVP in his prime, to do so suggests a lack of self-belief in his ability to lead a franchise independently. Frazier has noted that Durant will be down the list for him historically because of this move. The asterisk isn't a mark on the record book. It's a mark on Durant's character as a competitor. Frazier's philosophy dictates that a championship is only as valuable as the adversity overcome to achieve it. By bypassing the suffering phase of championship contention, the repeated failures against a superior rival, Durant diluted the value of the jewelry he eventually won. Compare Frazier's 1970 title to Durant's 2017 title. Frazier's team was a homegrown core built over years with key trades. They defeated Wilt and Jerry West's Lakers in 7 games. Frazier was the alpha leader alongside Reed. The title immortalized them as giant killers. Durant joined a 73-win team via free agency, instant entry. They swept or gentlemen swept competition with an overwhelmed roster. Durant was a luxury addition to an existing system, a passenger passenger on a moving train. The title serves as a footnote, not a definition. And here's the kicker. Frazier's comments weren't made in a vacuum. They triggered responses from major media figures like Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman. Some suggested the media was to blame for the narrative, but Frazier stood firm. He didn't retract the statement even when it was suggested that his comments might hurt the Knicks' chances of recruiting Durant in free agency. This demonstrates Frazier's commitment to his principles over organizational expediency. He valued the truth of the asterisk more than the potential of landing the superstar. Frazier's critique extended to Durant's time with the Brooklyn Nets. While some viewed Brooklyn as Durant seeking his own team to validate his legacy, Frazier viewed the partnership with Kyrie Irving as another attempt to circumvent the natural team-building process. He famously predicted that the duo of Durant and Irving would not equal the success of previous Nets incarnations, like Jason Kidd and Kenyon Martin. His reasoning was based on chemistry and grit, intangibles that defined the Kidd-era Nets and the Frazier-era Knicks. Frazier saw the Brooklyn experiment as an artificial construct, a super team built on friendship rather than basketball fit. The eventual disintegration of the Nets, marked by trade demands, injuries, and lack of playoff success, served as validation for Frazier's philosophy. Talent without organic chemistry and resilience is destined to fail. Durant's subsequent trade demand to Phoenix further solidified Frazier's view of the modern player as transient, unwilling to build through adversity, forever seeking the path of least resistance. For Frazier, Durant represents the death of the competitive spirit, the idea that a superstar should stay and fight, not run to join the team that beat him. And that's why Durant sits at number 1 on Frazier's list of the unforgiven. The 2016 decision wasn't just a career move. It was a statement that winning at any cost, even at the cost of competitive integrity, was acceptable. And to Frazier, that will never be acceptable. The move fundamentally altered how future superstars would view competition and legacy, creating a template for taking the easy road that subsequent players have followed. So what does it all mean? Frazier's critique of these 5 players isn't just old man yelling at cloud. It's a cohesive, sophisticated argument about the systemic failure of the modern NBA to uphold the values of the past. Frazier identifies a moral hazard in today's league. Players are rewarded financially and historically for behaviors that hurt the game's integrity. Through these 5 archetypes, Frazier mourns the death of the true franchise player, the star who embodies the city, plays every game, defends every possession, and stays through the lean years. Durant killed loyalty to the struggle with the asterisk move. Harden killed pride in defense with the Matador void. Leonard killed the obligation to play with part-time availability. Irving killed the sanctity of the locker room with distractions. James killed the organic growth of teams with the super team model. And Frazier sees these as connected. They represent a shift from collective values to individual power, from sacrifice to entitlement, from struggle to shortcut. Frazier often references the massive contracts these players sign, contracts that exceed $50 million annually. He views the unforgivable acts as particularly egregious given that generational wealth. In Frazier's era, players and fans were economically closer. Today, the gap is astronomical. When Frazier sees a player making that kind of money play matador defense or sit out for load management, he sees it as an insult to the working class roots of the sport. His critique is populist. He speaks for the fan who feels cheated by the entitlement of the modern star, the fan who saved up for weeks to see the game, who drove hours with their family, who believed the stars owed them something in return for that loyalty and that money. Ultimately, Frazier places an asterisk not just on Kevin Durant, but on the entire modern era defined by these 5 superstars. He views inflated statistics, triple-doubles, and 30-point averages as products of matador defense and pace, not necessarily increased skill. He views titles as devalued by super team collusion. He views the regular season as rendered meaningless by rest, and his critique resonates with a segment of the fan base that feels alienated by the modern game. Frazier gives voice to the old school, validating the feeling that something essential has been lost. The grit, the loyalty, the defense, the bond between player and city, the respect for the check. It's all been diluted in the transition to the player empowerment era. The ripple effects of these 5 players extend beyond just their individual careers. They've influenced an entire generation of younger players who now see this behavior as normal. Load management is standard practice. Demanding trades while under contract is expected. Teaming up with other stars is the path to championships. and defense is becoming a lost art. Frazier watches this evolution with growing concern because he knows that once these standards erode, they're nearly impossible to restore. The precedents set by these 5 superstars have fundamentally altered the league's landscape. Small market teams now operate knowing they're likely just development programs for future super teams. Fans hesitate to buy tickets to marquee matchups because they can't be sure the stars will actually play. And young players entering the league no longer see staying with one franchise as a badge of honor, but rather as a limitation on their career options. The cultural impact goes even deeper. Frazier believes these 5 have changed how success itself is defined in the NBA. It used to be about building something lasting, creating a legacy tied to a city and its fans. Now it's about collecting rings by any means necessary and maximizing individual brand value. The shift from team first to me first mentality permeates every level of basketball now. High school recruits team hop, college players enter the transfer portal at the first sign of adversity, and NBA stars view contracts as suggestions rather than commitments. Frazier sees a direct line from the decision in 2010 to the current state of the league, and he believes these 5 players bear responsibility for that transformation. They had the platform, the influence, and the talent to uphold the old standards. Instead, they chose a different path, and that choice has consequences that extend far beyond their individual legacies. But here's the thing. At 80 years old, Walt Clyde Frazier remains the stylistic and moral conscience of the NBA. While his never forgive list is often delivered with signature charm, wordplay, and a smile, the underlying message is serious and unyielding. Frazier believes that the custodians of the game, the superstars, have a responsibility to preserve its competitive integrity. He views Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, and LeBron James not as villains in a narrative sense, but as cautionary tales. Examples of what happens when individual power supersedes the collective good. To Frazier, basketball is a symphony. Every member must play in rhythm, must sacrifice for the open man, must honor the check provided by the fans. These 5 superstars, through their various transgressions against tradition, have played out of tune. The asterisk move, the matador apathy, the load management absence, the unprofessional distraction, the super team collusion. They've all contributed to a shift that Frazier believes harms the game he loves. And until the league returns to the values of defense, loyalty, and availability, these titans will remain, in the eyes of the Knicks legend, unforgiven. Frazier stands as the guardian of the garden, a voice from a different era reminding the world that while the game changes, the standards of true greatness should remain eternal. Greatness earned through sweat, through loyalty, through showing up every single night and giving the fans what they paid for. That's the Clyde standard, and these 5 fell short. Yet despite his harsh critiques, there's something almost hopeful in Frazier's stance. He's not just complaining about the modern game, he's preserving the memory of what basketball can be when played with the right values. He's a living reminder that there was once a time when stars didn't need to join forces to win, when players took pride in both ends of the floor, when showing up was non-negotiable, when loyalty meant something, and perhaps that's why his words carry such weight. Frazier isn't some bitter ex-player throwing stones. He's a 2-time champion, a Hall of Famer, and a broadcasting icon who's watched the game evolve for over 5 decades. His perspective comes from experience, from having lived through the struggles that built character and defined legacies. When Clyde says these 5 are unforgiven, it's not just opinion, it's the verdict of history itself, delivered by one of its most qualified judges. So if you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling us which of these 5 you think Frazier is hardest on. And hey, give the video some more hype if you haven't already. We appreciate you being here for the real stories that go deeper than the highlights. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.